We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and our topic today is: can world leaders be wrong about dangerous climate change? With us, the great Steve Gottenham. This is a short video, but one point that's pay attention, we need to pay attention is he has a book with 100,000 copies in print. It's fabulous, it's fantastic. And this is me, only to have a register here. Welcome, Steve. It's a great pleasure to have you here today again.
Hi, Armando. Great to join you again.
Steve sent a few charts, and please ask to share when you want, Steve. The first point I have to you is the expression, one big, beautiful bill. What does it mean, and what can happen with renewable energy in this case? But this expression means what exactly?
This is something President Trump has put forward. He calls it One Big Beautiful Bill. And so they made it the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And it's going through the Congress of the United States. First, it has to go through the House of Representatives, and it was passed there. Then it has to go through the Senate. And so it extends the Trump tax cuts that were set up 4 or 5 years ago. But a really big thing for energy is that it is cutting funding, and these are the tax credits for renewables in a very big way. And
when you mention fundings, you mention subsidies or not?
Yeah, well, they're sort of subsidies. Subsidies take very many forms. They can be direct payments, they can be loans, but maybe the biggest one are these tax credits, which if you put in a solar or a wind system or batteries or other sorts of things, you get a tax credit that's worth 30% of the value of the investment. And so that can either come off your own taxes, or they actually sell this to other companies who have high taxes for currency, for dollars. And this has been going on since about 1992 in the United States.
Oh,
they keep re-extending these wind and solar tax cuts, or these tax credits. But now in this big beautiful bill, they've said that you have to start construction of a wind or solar or other renewable system within 60 days after the bill is passed to get the credit, or you have to complete the whole thing by December 31st of 2028. And so this is going to be a big deal. This is very likely to really hammer renewable energy in the United States.
You have a picture, a chart? You have a chart of this?
Yeah, you can throw up a chart there. The first one is a graph here. What happened under the Biden administration is President Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which had vast subsidies for renewables. If you see on that graph, those are the 2025 projected. Those are actually running $100 billion a year.
Wow.
And this is a combination of tax credits and outright grants and loans. And it's supposed to go for 10 years. It's going to be more than $1 trillion. And it's really open-ended. If anybody starts a project for renewables, they can get this. There's no limit. And so just vast amounts of money flowing into these things. But now you can go to the next chart.
And where does money come from?
Well, it comes from taxpayers in the United States.
Oh.
So it's right out of the taxpayers. So the next picture is a picture of Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of which makes him the House of Representatives head. He's in the Republican Party, and he has passed this big, beautiful bill. You can go to the next chart.
Yeah, sure.
And another part of this bill, in addition to getting rid of tax credits for wind and solar, it's also phasing out tax credits for electric vehicles. And it says basically within the next year or two, depending on, I think it's by the end of 2025 for big EV manufacturers that have shipped 200,000 vehicles, but everybody else by the end of 2026. This big federal tax credit is going to disappear. So these things are going to have a tremendous impact on renewables in the United States. Now in Brazil, you get about 80% of your electricity from renewables. You have
Yes, yes, yes.
about 50.
Hydro is 70. And,
Hydro is
really,
very high, and then you have some
yeah,
solar, and you have
yeah,
some wind, and you have biofuels, you have other things.
yeah.
So you're not in the
Ethanol.
same position. But in the United States, we're still getting about 59% of our electricity from coal and natural gas, mostly from natural
Oh,
gas. And natural gas is growing. So wind and solar are having trouble penetrating, and particularly if you take away these credits. So
mhm.
this is a big shift in a big market. And
Yeah, it's a monster market.
yeah, it's going to have a big impact on wind and solar companies. And I could go through a lot of examples where they're having trouble, profitability and other sorts of things. But it's a big change.
Yeah, but Steve, this $7,500 is still working or is closed?
Yeah, it is until the end of the year. If you're Tesla, for example, Tesla has shipped more than 200,000 EVs. So at the end of the year, that will expire, which means that the dealers will not get this credit. They've found a way to arrange it so the dealers get it, and they lower the price directly on the EV that is sold.
Yeah, go ahead.
But this is going to disappear. And then if you're a smaller EV manufacturer, it's going to disappear at the end of 2026. And this is going to hurt the EV market in the United States. I think we're about 8% of new light vehicles sold are electric vehicles in the United States, but it's going to make them more expensive.
Yeah. Steve, tell me about Spain and Portugal. They had blackouts
Yeah.
last month.
So pop up the next slide. Yeah, this is I've talked before about the three big problems with wind and solar. One is they use 100 times the land area of other renewables, like coal or natural gas or nuclear. The second one is it's more expensive. A lot of people say it's cheaper, but if you look at, for example, Germany and Denmark, they have electricity rates that are the highest in Europe and 3 times the United States rate, and they have a lot of wind. And the third one is that they're intermittent. But now we have a new one that the world is learning about, and that is that a lot of wind and solar in a power system has very poor stability. So we just had a blackout in Spain and Portugal. 60 million people lost power last month for about a day, and it went into southern France as well. There were 35,000 people on trains, and the trains just stopped on electric trains. And they were in tunnels, and they were in mountains, and they were all over the place, and people just had to be picked up somewhere. Just a lot of problems. Now, in a traditional in any electrical power system, the supply that's generated has to be almost exactly equal to the electric power that is demanded by users at any one point in time. And so grid operators work to keep those equal. And if the generating doesn't equal the demand, then the voltage starts rising or falling, and the alternating current frequency changes as well. The frequency can go up or down. And if you're off by 3 or 4 or 5%, then you start destroying equipment that's attached to the network. And so grid operators work to keep the demand equal to supply. But now, if you have a traditional system where you have coal or you have hydropower or you have natural gas, those systems power big spinning turbines.
So
And
you are saying that responsible for the blackouts in Spain and Portugal were wind and solar?
Yeah, they just announced 2 weeks before this big blackout that they had 100% renewable, and most of that was solar. And what happened was a couple of solar systems went down, and then the grid got out of balance, and then everything started shutting off. These things are set up to shut off automatically. The entire grid, 60 million people, went down in 5 seconds. It just went down in 5 seconds. And as I was saying, if you have traditional hydropower or coal or natural gas, those systems power big spinning turbines. And if the power goes out for a second, the turbines keep spinning. There's a built-in inertia, and it gives us stability to the system. But when you remove those and you put in all solar or wind, then you have the system does not have a stability, and so it can go down very, very fast. And that's what happened in Spain. And the world is learning that if you put in a lot of these systems that don't have that built-in stability, you have real problems.
Impressive. So, solar and wind is so, let's see, vulnerable in terms of constancy to generate electricity.
They are, yeah. Now, and again, in Brazil, you have 60% hydro, and that powers spinning turbines, and so you have a built-in stability, which is good.
Yeah, and we do not have coal, a little bit only, and natural gas. We have 14 power plants to support
Not too much,
wind and solar. Yeah,
but the hydro keeps you in good shape. Now, put up the next slide.
sure.
Now, we have a problem in the US with power outages increasing. This is data from the Energy Information Administration. And this graph shows the average cumulative outage in a year for every electricity user. And back in 2013 or 2014, the average outage was about 3.5 hours a year, cumulative. But now it's running 5, 6, and 7 hours a year. It has more than doubled. And this is because we're putting in a lot of wind and solar in the United States, and we're creating this instability. And this is a warning to nations that you have to keep traditional coal or gas or nuclear or hydropower around if you want your electricity systems to be stable.
Mm-hmm. This chart shows how many hours in a month, in a week.
Oh, this is cumulative for a year.
Cumulative, okay, for you.
So if it says if I'm a user over the year, maybe I'll have 3 outages. They're each an hour long. The cumulative will be 3.5 hours. But now that's running 5, 6, or 7 hours in 2021, 22, and 23 across the country. So we're heading in the wrong direction in the United States. And
what's the benchmark? What's the benchmark number for this variable?
Well, some nations actually are better. I'm not sure what Brazil's number is, but many of the nations in Europe and Asia actually have lower levels of outage than the United States. But we're headed in the wrong direction right now. And obviously, Spain and Portugal, they did 12 hours in a single shot. So
But this is based on the reason that they are using too much solar and wind.
Yes, systems which are not inherently stable, which are not powering spinning turbines. They go through. I can't remember what there's an intermediate unit that switches their electricity up to the grid level electricity, makes it AC, and I'm forgetting what that's called, but there's no stability there. If solar goes out immediately, that portion of the system will stop.
And do you see something similar can happen in the United States because Texas, for instance, has a lot of wind energy and solar?
Well, I think we have a lot of grid operators working, are realizing this is a big problem right now. So they've come to an awakening that we can't have this wind and solar. And then the other thing that's going on in the United States is we have a tremendous demand for artificial intelligence. And guys like Microsoft and Amazon and Meta and Google are all putting in these AI systems in data centers, and they need vast amounts of power.
That's
Matter of
right.
fact, we have a thing in the United States called BYOP right now, Bring Your Own Power. They're actually building their own gas turbine plants to be able to run these AI centers. So the United States is waking up, and I think this is going to get back to heading in the proper direction towards stability. But for those nations that want to put in a wind and solar like Spain and Portugal, bad idea.
Steve, next November in Brazil will happen COP30, and probably private jets will arrive with some important people. Of course, they're using CO2 to this private jet. And they are constructing a road through the forest to connect some systems to this event. How do you see this?
A lot of folks are complaining about this too. They're saying, well, this is environmentally damaging. I think the road is only 8 miles long or 13 kilometers. It's pretty short, but it's attracting some. You can put up the next slide if you want on the COP31.
Sure. This one?
Let me see. Yeah, and that has a picture of the construction down there on the highway. But
Yes.
I think the president of Brazil is trying to get this done by the time COP30 comes around next November. There's actually good news. You can go to the next slide. Around the world. It is true, according to United Nations data, that we're still losing forests globally, but the deforestation has been slowing. 3 decades ago, it was high, and then 2 decades ago, it was less. Last decade ago, it was less even so. And we have about 2/3 of the nations of the world, those are all the green ones, that either have growing forests or stable forests. We're still losing forests in Central and South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. But as those countries get to modern power systems and better agriculture techniques, we're going to get to stable forests, and we're going to get to forest growth everywhere. And I'm predicting that by 2050, we're going to have net global forest growth. So that's really a good news story. And you don't hear much about it in the press, but deforestation is declining globally. More and more nations are looking to keep their forests around.
Interesting. This chart is fantastic because all Latin America is this problem.
Yeah, it is an issue, but I think things are going to turn around and get better. So
yeah. And what are the main reasons of the deforestation? You know?
Well, agriculture is probably the biggest culprit, but another thing about agriculture is that farmers are getting more and more productive. They can grow more and more output on the land, and so they don't need to put so much land into production. And then the second is there's still a lot of nations that are burning wood to heat homes and to cook. And matter of fact, in Africa, I sometimes show a picture of women walking with a basket of wood on their head. They walk long distances, gather wood, bring it home, and that tends to bring the forest down as well. So as those people get natural gas and they get electrical power and other things, they won't have to go down, cut down the trees, and better ag techniques also will help. So those are things that we can look forward to.
Great. Steve, leaders, worldwide leaders, several of them are saying that humans are causing a dangerous climate change. Right or wrong?
You can put up the next chart. It's more than several. We actually have in just about 180 countries today, the heads of state saying that humans, at least they say they believe that humans are causing dangerous climate change. Mr. Trump is an exception, and I think maybe the president from Argentina, is it? Mr. Milei is probably another exception, but a lot of others do. And so people ask me, how can all these world leaders be wrong? And so I say, well, this has happened in the past where all the world leaders were wrong. And there were two big examples. One is peak oil and gas. In the 1970s and 1980s and up till about 2000, all of the world leaders thought we were going to run out of oil and gas. And this is a quote from President Jimmy Carter of the United States. 1977, he did a television broadcast, and he said, quote, "World consumption of oil is still going up. If it were possible to keep it rising during the 1970s and 1980s, about 5% a year as it has in the past, we could use up all the proven reserves of oil in the entire world by the end of the next decade." And that's what his advisors were telling him, but they were all wrong. And if you go to the next chart.
Yeah, sure. Second. Yeah.
This is a graph. There's two graphs here. The bottom red graph is the amount of petroleum that is produced every year at million barrels per day. And that has been rising since the 1980s. But the blue graph is the amount of reserves of oil. And if you look, the reserves have been rising faster than the consumption. Back in 1980, the world had about 29 years of reserves. at that consumption rate. Now it has like 47 years of reserves at a higher production rate. And so the data shows that human ingenuity is able to get more and more petroleum. And by the way, I could put up a similar chart for natural gas. More and more petroleum and gas out of the earth. We're better and better at it. And so the reserves are rising. So peak oil is going to happen some point, but it's going to be probably more than a century away. So this is one example where the world leaders were completely wrong. And let's go on to the next example.
But one point here. So that's the reason that we cannot stop exploration of oil, to increase reserves to the long stay of oil consumption.
Yeah, we still have 80% of the world's energy comes from hydrocarbons, coal, oil, and natural gas. That's still the case. Yeah. And we still need that. And 95% of the fuel in our vehicles, Brazil's an exception, 95% of the fuel in vehicles worldwide, it comes from petroleum or petroleum derivatives. You have a lot of ethanol in Brazil. That's a little bit different. Okay, now the second area that all the world leaders were wrong was overpopulation. Paul Ehrlich wrote the worldwide bestseller, The Population Bomb, in 1968. And he said, quote, "The battle to feed humanity is over. In the 1970s and 1980s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now." But he was wrong, because agriculture grew much faster than population, the food output. And so we didn't have this starvation. And now the crazy thing that is, and by the way, the United Nations thought this was going to happen. We had the United States that was forcing nations to put in population control before we would give them foreign aid. I talk about this in my third book. Now I'm forgetting the title of my third book here. Outside the Green Box: Rethinking Sustainable Development, where I talk about population and how the world was wrong about this. So what happened? Well, people reduced their family sizes. Global fertility rates declined. You can put the next chart up.
Yeah, sure. That's the reason of a Rome club in the past. Same.
The Club of Rome. They thought we were going to have overpopulation and all this disaster. Yes, exactly. There were many foreign leaders in that club, and many heads of state. President Jimmy Carter was a member. But this shows a graph of world fertility rates, and the fertility rates is the number of children a woman has in the world or each continent on average. And back in 1950, which is the red curves, each woman on Earth was having about 5 children during her lifetime. And everybody thought, wow, that's going to just create overpopulation. And you could see all the other continents where it was very high as well. But the green curve now is in 2021. The world fertility rate is down to about 2.1 or 2. It's basically equal to that blue line is the population replacement rate. Oh, you need about 2.1 children per woman to keep the population at the same level. And we now have 6 of the 7 world continents where the fertility rate is below the level to keep the population at the same level. The only continent where it's still growing faster is Africa. But in all the other, including Central and South America, the fertility rate is too low to maintain the population. So this is another case where all of the world leaders, the United Nations and the heads of state, were all wrong. They all thought we had a big overpopulation issue. And so I tell people, peak oil and overpopulation are 2 examples where all the world leaders are wrong, and we're going to see the same thing with the climate.
Very good. And Europe, in this case of these numbers, are the worst situation, worst case.
They're very low, down to 1.5. And by the way, a lot of countries, like in Europe, in South Korea, and others, are offering big incentives for men and women to have children because they're trying to get their population to grow. Population is declining in China very, very fast. China had the one-child policy for many, many years, and there were 300 million forced sterilizations 300 million abortions in China over a period of 30 years, just a terrible situation. And now their population is falling. So just another example where the world leaders were wrong.
And immigration is a kind of solution for this situation?
Well, it can be, yeah. Actually, the United States population continues to rise, but it is because of immigration. It's not because of children that are being born.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, immigration is a factor as well.
Yeah, perfect. Let me. It's a point that the United States is exiting Paris Climate Agreement, United Nations Organization for Health. What's happening in this case? Are they seeing something that we cannot see from here?
Trump thinks that the money we're spending on it is not going to help the climate, and it's just a transfer of wealth from the United States to other nations. So he has cut off both money coming from the federal government going to the UN or UN climate programs. And also there's another organization called USAID that he is shutting down, where a lot of money was being funneled through that. It was about $10 billion a year. And so, yeah, he is withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accords. He just thinks it's foolish things. I tend to agree with him, but sorry, my phone rang here. We'll shut that off.
No problem.
But so it's going to have a factor on what's going on around the world. And I personally think we should be investing global funds in important things like getting electricity to people. We still have 600 or 700 million people that don't have electricity. Yeah. We have millions killed every year.
Is not the U.S. responsibility at this point? So it's a world responsibility. So every country,
sort of, yeah. Except the current administration in the United States doesn't accept that. They want America first, and they don't want to be shoveling money to elsewhere. And some people think that's terrible, but maybe that's the case. So,
how do you see the climate apocalypse? So, is it something real?
No, I don't believe it is. And as I talk about in 3 of my books, my first 2 books are on climate. The Climatism and the Mad World of Climatism are mostly about climate, some energy, but they talk about how nature dominates Earth's temperatures and climate change, not human emissions. Human emissions are very, very small. They're only 1 or 2% of the greenhouse effect, what comes out of global factories. Overwhelmingly, water vapor is Earth's dominant greenhouse gas. And then even the carbon dioxide and methane portion is dominated by nature, what's coming out of the oceans or the biosphere. Human emissions are very small. Instead, the only sensible policy for climate is adaptation. If you're concerned about ocean rising, you do what Netherlands has done for centuries. They build seawalls, they build artificial islands. If you're concerned about hurricanes, like in the Caribbean, you want to get the wealth of those societies up so they can build very strong concrete buildings to resist hurricanes. In Africa, we have 40% of the people that don't even have, they don't have an electric fan even, and the temperatures are very hot in the summer. Let's get them low-cost energy. Let's boost their income of their societies, and that will help them the most. And let's adapt. Thinking we can all drive electric cars and stop the oceans from rising, that is modern superstition.
Do you believe on renewable energy collapse? Is it right?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a breakdown, and we're starting to see that. It's not only in the United States and Mr. Trump and his policies, but we're seeing that in Europe already. A good friend of mine, Dr. Benny Peiser, in England, has pointed out that the people in Europe are jaded. They don't believe the alarm anymore. There's a party in England calling it Net Stupid Zero. And in Germany last summer, the number 2 party that won the Alternative for Deutschland, the Alternative for Germany, has a plank in their political platform that says ban all wind turbines. This is Germany. They have like the highest density of wind turbines in the world.
Yes.
And so we're starting to see this around the world. In the United States too, we've had back in 2008, we had 2 counties out of 1,600 in the United States that had restrictions on wind turbines. Now we have over 500 counties, and that is growing and growing. People are pushing back. They just don't want to see all the land taken. They don't want to see these tall structures. So I think this is going to break down. And then we have like things like blackouts in Spain, where 60 million people lose their power. We're going to see people get back to sensible energy policy. We're going to have a mix of renewables and a mix of hydrocarbon fuels. But this idea that we need to force everybody to save the planet, that's where we've really gone off base.
You see any relationship between climate crisis and apocalypse and things like that related to left administrations, more left administrations?
Well, certainly in the United States, the left-wing side, and we're split in the United States, continues to believe that we're destroying the climate. We need renewable energy. We need electric cars. But the current Trump administration is saying we don't. And by the way, he is just cutting everything. If there's any program in the federal government that has climate in its name, he is cutting it. He's cutting the funding, even the climate models. The U.S. has 14 of the world's 40 climate models that model climate change. He is defunding those, and so it's really there's a lot of people crying about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we'll see what happens in 3 or 4 years with a new administration. If it's Republicans again, it may continue. If the Democrats get back into power, maybe they'll try and reverse it.
Yeah.
So
totally opposite. Yeah. Steve, we have 30 minutes. Tell us about your books and where people can buy them. Which are them? Talk a little for us. This.
So my latest is Green Breakdown: The Coming Renewable Energy Failure, and I talk about all the problems with the energy transition and point out they're not going to occur. By the way, it's a fun book as well. In addition to the science and economics, I have about 150 color sidebars. You can see one on the screen. These are real headlines around the world, crazy things. Here's a Swedish scientist that advocates eating humans to combat climate change. And he actually gives these lectures. And then after the lectures, he asks the audience to raise their hand if they'd be willing to try human flesh. So it's got all kinds of crazy things, and it's a lot of fun. It's a fun read, as well as giving people the real facts about the situation. I also have another book called The Mad World of Climatism, which is great if you have kids in school, in high school, or in college. They're getting a very one-sided point of view in most schools, and The Mad World will give them a more balanced view.
Is this a joke or real? So you mentioned the book Swedish scientist advocates eating humans.
No, this is a real. I think he's talking about maybe people that have died. You know, like the movie Soylent Green. But I don't know. No, this is a true headline from Big Think. I don't think this is being made up. The references in the book, but there's all sorts of these kind of things. There was a grade school in Utah in the United States where a teacher was feeding bugs to kids in class. Because she wanted to teach them they shouldn't be eating beef, they should be eating insects to save the planet. So, I mean, these are real things. I just heard the other day, I don't know if you have a credit report in Brazil, but
thanks, but we do not have in Brazil. That I know.
CNN was carrying a report saying that climate change was hurting your credit score. So, but this stuff comes up all the time, and it's just goofy stuff.
All type of minds. Oh my God. Yeah, really. Steve Gottenham, was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Armando. Until the next time.
Next time too. Yeah. Have a good day.